How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez and Dave Meltzer here on Wrestling Observer Radio. It is June 18th, 2012, here at figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. We got a lot of news to talk about today. And first off, Dave, happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day, but you don't have any kids.
I have cats. Same thing. Well,
no, it's not.
It's not the same thing. You are correct.
I've had cats and I've had kids. It's not the same thing.
Well,
when you have no kids, cats are like your kids.
Exactly.
But when you have kids, it's completely different.
I figure that's the way it's going to be. But
yeah,
we're a ways down the road from that. But anyway,
yeah.
I hope you had a good Father's Day, and all you fathers out there listening, I hope you had a great Father's Day as well. Hopefully, you didn't watch most of this pay-per-view.
Next year on Father's Day, I hope that they at least deliver a good pay-per-view. Because when you're going to it's like I have enough guilt spending 3.5 hours watching a show. The least they could do is have a couple of put some put on a good show. It was like I don't want to say the show sucked because it wasn't like I was mad about anything.
The world title matches were good.
They were fine, but they weren't pay-per-view world title matches. They were just matches, I thought. I thought the Sheamus match was okay. I mean, it was good, but it was no better than a Sheamus Dolph Ziggler match on SmackDown. It felt like watching SmackDown. I watched SmackDown on Friday night, and I watched this, and I don't really know that there's a whole hell of a lot of difference other than they did a few more angles, and this went an hour longer, and the Cena Big Show match had stipulations that nobody gave a shit about, and the match was okay. The Punk match was good. It was probably the best thing on the show. It was the best thing on the show, but it was like 5 notches down from the match last month for all the reasons that we knew going in, but it still was. I mean the Kane thing took the match down. The AJ thing made the finish feel like shit. I don't know. Just thumbs in the middle, sort of down would be my thing, but it just wasn't anything special. There was no great matches on the show for sure, and there were several bad matches too.
It was a below average WWE pay-per-view, and here's a trivia fact for everybody. This show went 25 minutes less than Raw on Monday night. Think about that.
Yeah, that's interesting to know.
That's distressing to know.
So it didn't drag as much as Raw on Monday night.
Well, it didn't, but
it was better. It was better than Raw on Monday night. I'll say that. It was better
than Raw, but I was just sitting there watching it, kind of sitting there thinking, pay-per-views used to be special, and I guess they are still special in some ways, not in a lot of ways.
There's bad. Every year you're gonna have some bad pay-per-views. The WWE's had a lot of good ones this year, and nobody ever hits 100% on pay-per-views. I mean, you think you should because it's pro wrestling and you can control it, but I've never seen a company go 100% on pay-per-views for a year, and this was I don't know if I'd have to look back. I don't know if it's the weakest one, but it feels to me like it was the weakest one.
Well, my point was kind of more that I watch when I'm watching a 3-hour Raw every week and 2 hours of SmackDown. The idea of a 3-hour WWE pay-per-view, especially when it really hit me when the Sin Cara match, when Unico comes down to the ring, and I was like, oh my God, they're going to do Unico versus Sin Cara again. I've seen this match
for the
500th
time. I know.
It's not like it's not like you're giving me like a bad match 1,000 times, but it's not really like a great match at this point. And it's just, to me, it's like, because there's 5 hours, well, there's going to be 5 hours, and some weeks there are 5 hours of live television or tape television. Between Raw and SmackDown, 5 hours of television. Because you have so much television and so few wrestlers, when you look at the 5 hours of television you have to put out every week, here's what happens. You get a pay-per-view, and a pay-per-view caliber match is a match I've seen 5,000 times on TV because of the limited number of guys they have on the roster.
I'll tell you what, though. This Sin Cara match with Unico was probably
the worst one they've had in history.
I don't want to say worst, because it's not like they blew spots, but it was the most lackluster match that I've ever seen the two of them have. It was like they just went out there. It was like I'm watching it going like, Sin Cara has finally learned to do WWE style, and now he's completely worthless. Because it's like, what do you need with a 180-pound guy who doesn't speak English doing WWE style? There's absolutely, you can get you can get 210-pound guys who can speak English doing that same thing. I mean, it's like
or you could have
the whole deal with Sin Cara is he should be different. And I know you've got to blend in and everything, but it's like you don't take everything away. I mean, one of the things I was just watching the Super Junior tournament from New Japan, and Angel De Oro's there, and it's like he's out there, and every match is fun. I'm not saying it's not necessarily a 4-star match, but it's like they know that they bring in a luchador, and you know what he's out there to do? He's out there to do entertaining lucha libre. So that's his role. His role is not to go in there and go, let me try to do New Japan style and be like completely average or below average at it. It's like, do what I can do, and the guys work with him as best they can. And he's fun because on a 10-match card, he's different from the other 9 matches. I mean, it was like Sin Cara. Okay, Sin Cara is good on a card. He should be different from everybody else. I watched it, I was like, ooh, how was he different? He just did the same thing everyone else did, only he had 5 minutes and didn't do a hell of a lot. He sold and did 1 or 2 moves, came back. And, I mean, again, for a Sin Cara Unico match, it wasn't any good.
It's funny you should mention New Japan, because I remember when they were going to bring in Sin Cara. This was right around the time, it was either right before or shortly after they got rid of Low Ki. And I was just kind of sitting there thinking, you're going to bring in Mystico, and you're going to train him to work WWE style, and as you noted, the guy can't speak any English. And meanwhile, you could probably just throw a mask on Low Ki, and he'd be your #1 masked superstar once Rey Mysterio has to retire. And since Rey Mysterio's not around most of the time, he'd be your #1 masked lucha-style star. But nope, they fired him and brought in Sin Cara.
Well, here's the other one. He was original. The original idea was for Low Ki to come in as a mask guy.
Yeah, is the anti-Rey.
Yeah, and then they just, by the time they got, I think he had knee surgery, and a year later they just dropped it, and they just whatever. And here's the other one. I just watched the New Japan pay-per-view for May the 3rd, which had the Low Ki, and Low Ki was on that other show too, but the Low Ki Prince Devitt match, which was like 3 times as good as anything on this show. And I'm just thinking, like, here's a guy who they cut, okay, and he's better than anyone was on this show, by far, by the way. I mean, there was no one on this show, not Punk, not nobody, who was close to Low Ki in that match. And part of it was he was working with a great guy. But nevertheless, and it's like, I know.
You could bring up Austin Aries as well, who couldn't even make Tough Enough.
I tell you what an indictment that is.
Boy,
that Austin Aries, who's main eventing the next TNA pay-per-view, was cut from Tough Enough in favor of frickin'
Andy Levine, who has been
not
cut.
And just not. Look at everyone.
Well,
Skid marks because he's got blonde hair, and Matt Cross. Who was fine. Matt Cross was one of the better guys, and they cut him too. What's his name? Jeremiah, who never had one professional wrestling match in his life, and Austin Aries, who's had 10 years worth. But it's like, well, look at him. He doesn't look like a star, and it's like, oh, good Lord. It's like once you have that narrow mind, it's like think people should be different. I wouldn't want it. Believe me, I would not want a whole promotion filled with a bunch of Austin Aries guys. But one of them, if he's unique and he's good, what's wrong with that? That's, I don't know. This was just not a good show. That's all I can say.
Well, let's start with let's start with the dark match here.
The dark match sucked. I mean, that was actually, the worst match on the whole show. Even worse than the Ricardo match, I think, just because the Ricardo match was really, really bad. But this one, it was like you get 2 guys who cannot work at all unless they're working with someone who can carry them. And so the whole idea of the match was flawed from start to finish. And then this finish where, Brodus Clay does, like, I think it was a fall away, but he does a move, and Otunga rolls out of the ring. And it's not like he even, like, throws up his hands and walk. But, I mean, the walkout finish I hate anyway. But he just stands there on the apron, or actually on the floor. And the referee's counting 6, 7, 8. And you're going like, okay, he's getting ready to get in. And then 9, and then 10. Ding, ding, ding. It's like, that's the finish? And it's like, since Brodus, and think about this, Brodus is coming back out for a main event run-in. And he can't even pin David Otunga in a dark match where the face might as well just go over anyway. Well, it's semi-dark because I know it's on Facebook, but you know what I'm saying.
YouTube. I mean, yes.
It was like, this was bad on so many levels because at least, like, the Ricardo match was bad, but there was an attempt to be entertaining with a storyline of some sorts.
And
it
they
didn't
delivered
work.
they delivered on the stipulated finish.
Yeah, I guess. But that match sucked too. But
It was horrible,
this was,
but you know,
yeah.
It was a tuxedo match, and a man got stripped of his tuxedo, and he lost. So at least they gave you a finish.
But I mean, like, shouldn't like Brodus Clay, given that you're bringing him back later in the show, shouldn't he like get a big win?
Yes, he should have destroyed this man.
So anyway, that was the start, and didn't start out good, and didn't have a lot of heat, and much heat at all, really. And there you go. So that was the start.
We had Sheamus and Dolph Ziggler for the world title, and this was a crowd that wanted Dolph Ziggler to win. And they chanted his name throughout the match. Jerry Lawler tried to claim they were actually chanting "Let's go Sheamus," which was pretty funny. And it's kind of funny because these two guys, especially Dolph Ziggler, everyone talks about Dolph Ziggler, and he is great, you know, but him and Sheamus did not have the best match they could have had together. They botched some spots. There were moments of awkwardness. It was just, there's one point where it almost fell apart. And
yeah. You know, here's the thing. They had the two TV matches, I think, right? Yeah, they had the Friday SmackDown, and they came back on Raw or whichever, maybe it was the other direction. But I think it was a SmackDown on a Friday and a Raw on a Monday, or no, maybe in the other way. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that Sheamus won both of them. Both of those matches were better than this one.
Mm-hmm. So the finish was just the Brogue Kick. Brogue kicked him, and actually no, the finish was the what did they do here? They did the
it's a Brogue Kick.
Yeah, it was Brogue Kick. Kicked out a bunch of finishes.
The white noise and was that what it's called? Yeah, the white noise and the Brogue Kick.
That's right. Ziggler went for his finisher, and Sheamus hoisted him up for his white noise, and hit the Brogue Kick and pinned him 1, 2, 3. And the fans were, as noted, behind Ziggler, but they did cheer for Sheamus when he won. And of course, he went to the back, and Ziggler looked all depressed. But I guess as we've talked about before, he was never going to win on the show anyway, so there you go. And he's probably in line for Money in the Bank.
Yeah, you know, but so what? It's like, so let's get the guys ready. You know, I got to say this. So this is something else that they did on Thursday, and it's not that they did it on Thursday on a show that nobody sees, and what was on a show that no one's going to see other than on the internet, which isn't enough people to count anyway. They taped like the Full Sail University thing. Okay, it's the mentality behind it. They had Seth Rollins lose to. Boy, I don't even remember who he lost to. He lost to somebody of absolutely no value on the main roster. And Richie Steamboat, I know, lost to Jinder Mahal. And Bo Rotunda was on the losing end of a tag match. And it's like, this is the mentality. Like, they have some guys in developmental that are, I mean, again, Rollins has his weaknesses. Okay, Steamboat has his weaknesses. Rotunda has his weaknesses as well. But guess what? You know what? Everybody's got weaknesses. I can pick apart anyone. I can pick apart Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? I can pick apart Ric Flair. You know, if I want to be negative, they all have weaknesses. The point is that this is a company that needs to make stars, and it's like you can go in there and make every one of these guys into Tyson Kidd by doing what you did to Tyson Kidd. It doesn't matter how talented they are. You can do it, you know. And it's like when you bring somebody in. I want to bring somebody in. If I got a promotion and I'm bringing somebody new in, my idea is that I want to give him a chance to be a star. Now, if he fails, he fails. You know, and more guys are going to fail than are going to succeed. Not everyone's going to be a superstar, but you give them a chance. You go in there and it's like Tyson Kidd tonight. Tyson Kidd tonight, yeah, he's one of the best guys on the whole card. That you know, but who cares because they've destroyed him, and that's what again. Richie Steamboat, just as an example, again, Richie Steamboat, just because of who he is, he should be debuting with wins. I mean, for a while, and there's something missing in Steamboat, and part of it is that he wrestles just like his father, and he's not as good as his father, and he's probably never going to be as good as his father, and it's too high a thing. But maybe people will like him, and he ain't bad. I mean, he's smooth. He works pretty well. But I'm watching this guy. It's like, why, again, okay, it's on a show. Again, it's on NXT. No one sees it and no one cares. Okay, but the mentality behind it is, why would you have Richie Steamboat losing to Jinder Mahal? I mean, can you explain that to me? Other than, well, he's on the main roster and the other guy's not quite there yet. And it's like, well, now we're going to establish that that every one of these guys that you bring up, with the exception of Ambrose, who looks like they are going to protect a little bit, they're not quite good enough to be on the main roster. And it's like, boy, that's a way to get them off and running, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it's also NXT that nobody's watching right now.
No, I know, but I'm not saying like it's the killer. I'm saying the mentality behind it. The fact is, if they were booked on Raw this week, they would still do that same finish.
Well, that'd be significantly more concerning to me, but that's probably what will happen.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the whole idea of like, why would you do it? I mean, yeah, I can do something really stupid.
They've done this forever. It's just what they
do.
These guys. Jinder Mahal is a star, and
no, he's not.
He's
and
the
he's
winner.
Never going to be.
I'm giving you their mentality, not my mentality. I do not personally consider Jinder Mahal a star, but he is a main roster guy, so I'm sure they see him, and it's like, well, of course he beats Richie Steamboat. Come on now.
Yeah,
they got a lot of problems because of things.
But that's the whole point. That's why. But okay, that's why where we're at now. We got a freaking pay-per-view where nobody's a star, and that's the deal.
That brings us to Vince McMahon, who actually is a star, but he is such a star, in fact, that if you knock him out and deliver a concussion to him at 66 years old, he's still back for the pay-per-view just fine.
I was amazed seeing him just walk around not selling that thing.
Yeah, it's just concussion, you know.
I mean, I thought they would have this, dramatic thing at the end of the thing. They would tell you that Vince wasn't going to be there and all that, and then he shows up. But no, at the very beginning, they just killed off any hopes of an angle.
So Laurinaitis is there, and he's in this red, white, and blue suit, because, of course, he's the man behind People Power. And anyway, he said, Vince, I just want to make sure that our relationship is still going to be strong once the Big Show beats John Cena tonight. And Vince just kind of looked at him and walked into his dressing room and slammed the door. So there you go. We had Santino and Ricardo. As noted, this match sucked. At least they did, in fact, do a tuxedo match. They attempted to make it entertaining, and they delivered a finish. That's literally the only good thing you can say about this. The
crowd hated it.
Yeah, there were boring chants for a Santino match for the first time I can ever recall.
Ever. Yeah, I know, same thing.
So the story was he's wearing a tuxedo, and Ricardo rips a sleeve off, and there's the Cobra. And Santino's about to use it, but Ricardo rips the Cobra off of his arm. So they wrestle, and they do a spot where Ricardo is going to rip his pants off and his shoes and such, and it is revealed that Santino's wearing a Cobra sock, which he then uses to kick Ricardo, and at that point he tore off all his clothes, and the big comedy spot at the end was that Ricardo Rodriguez was wearing underwear with Alberto Del Rio's face on it. So there you go. This was not really any good.
No.
We had a CM Punk interview, and up walks AJ, and this was a storyline throughout the show where she was meeting with all the guys in the world title main event, and Punk was first, and she wished him luck and kissed him. And he said, luck is for losers. And he walked off, and that was the end of that. So this was the first.
The world is about luck.
It's about, well, not when you're CM Punk.
No, the world is about luck and timing is what is the key to the world.
And
no matter
hard work.
Hard work helps, but it's luck and timing. Believe me, more than anything. For all of these guys, I think that they're so smart or so dumb. But if you're in the right place at the right time, and it's timing. If you can take any of these guys in wrestling, in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they, whether they're promoters or wrestlers, if they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, they could go broke, and they could get their careers go nowhere.
We had Christian and Cody Rhodes for the Intercontinental title, and they had a average television match. Basically, they worked hard, they tried as usual.
I thought they had a good match actually.
Yeah. So Christian ended up hitting the frog splash, which I thought was great because I always enjoy when a guy gets a pin with something that's not necessarily his finisher. Because then the next time you do a frog splash,
but that's been Christian's finisher ever since he came back.
Well, he's used the kill switch and he's used the frog splash and
he's been using the frog splash since he came back. I mean, he uses.
So we had the knees up finish there near the end as well as he went forward and Cody got his knees up and ended up doing some more near falls and such, and got the pin. Cody Rhodes beaten yet again, and now he's on his way to perhaps Money in the Bank and the briefcase. There's a list of guys. I don't really take anything seriously at this point, but I would think he's in the running, largely based on his losing.
Yeah, I think he is too.
Yeah.
But the thing, so is whatever. They don't get the title and they'll get a Jack Swagger title run.
Well, yeah. But, you know, Daniel Bryan was supposed to get a Jack Swagger title run as well, and he didn't because he stepped up.
Well, Daniel Bryan's a lot better than Cody Rhodes. The thing that really surprised me about this match was that, you know, in the Northeast, Cody has been really popular. And this one, it was like all those Cody Rhodes fans, they decided to skip the show tonight because he was just a guy on the show.
We had a 4-way match. This was not billed in advance. It was a surprise bonus match with Primo and Epico, Tyson Kidd and Justin Gabriel, Titus O'Neil and Darren Young, and the Usos, with the winners becoming the number 1 contenders.
For the non-existent tag team champions.
That's right. Who are the tag team champions?
Kofi Kingston and R-Truth, but R-Truth's hurt.
That's right. Yeah, Kofi made his big return tonight, and he was the only one of about 6 babyfaces that didn't look like a total geek in the main event, but we'll get to that after a while. So they had a match, and I think the highlight of it was the spot at the end where a bunch of dudes are outside, and Primo is on the post, and Tyson Kidd cuts him off, and he goes up there, and he gives Primo a top rope Hurricane Rana, which sends Primo ass over tea kettle onto the pile outside, and that was pretty much the only thing that fans cared about at all during this match. They slept through most of it, and
the work was good though. It's just like none of these guys mean
none
anything.
of these guys were over, and nobody cared about them.
No. You know, I mean, like the Usos are so good considering their level of experience. They are so freaking good. And, you know, and Primo's a really good worker. Tyson Kidd's an excellent worker. I mean, there was so much talent here that they've destroyed. I mean, that was like the message when I'm watching these guys. And they're performing. I mean, realistically, this was probably the second best match on the show. But it meant nothing to anybody.
We had the big deal with AEW's back after
he
disappeared for a full month, and they did the swerve here where they were teasing that he was going to go with I guess Primo and Epico, and he ended up
he's been with.
Yeah, he ended up essentially turning on them, I guess, and aligning himself.
He turned on them. Primo was hurt. He threw Primo in the ring to get pinned by Darren Young, and then when Epico tried to make the save, he grabbed Epico's leg and kept him from making the save.
So he is now with O'Neil and Young.
And now he's with O'Neil and Young. And he also botched up their getting a return match because I didn't know this, but your automatic return, you only get 30 days to do your automatic return. And so he didn't sign it in the 30 days.
But
isn't their manager like Rosa? Who is their manager?
I think that's just their eye candy.
Okay. Well, then they got bad business sense.
Well, that is correct.
Yeah.
I never knew there was a statute of limitations for your immediate rematch, but apparently there is
now. It's the new rule that they can forget. Kind of like, the weight limit in the X division and things like that.
Triple H came out and did a promo, and long story short, he wants a fight with Brock Lesnar. He said his arm was pretty much healed. In a few more weeks, it'd be great, and a few weeks after that, he'd be in fighting shape. Said he wanted to get rid of all of the lawsuits, lawyers, bald-headed managers, the whole shebang, and he just wanted to fight Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. And that was the big challenge, and the people responded to it to a degree, but as far as, like, you know, a challenge for a
top
match.
No buys, man. They took that program, and I mean, it's like, you know, it's they can save it, but what a weak interview. That's when that thing was over. It's like God, Triple H is such a good promo, and that was such a he didn't have his heart into it. He was just, you know, it was like he didn't give it a moment of thought, and he didn't make it exciting at all. And he took something that the crowd wanted to see, and by the time he was done, nobody wanted to see it. That took talent.
Yeah, well, they did a horrible job even promoting it for this show. And I don't know, maybe they had an idea for this show and they changed their minds about it and decided to just downplay it afterwards.
Well, you know what though? If they're going to do that, why don't even bother with it then? When you're paying a guy that much money, you got two choices. You either cut bait and say, look, you're not worth it, goodbye, or push like crazy and try to make money. This half-assed, why even bother? Why bother if you're going to do it half-assed?
We had a deal.
He wasn't mad about his arm being broken. He didn't put Brock Lesnar over as anything special. He didn't talk about nothing.
He basically just wanted to get rid of this lawsuit deal.
And he didn't even explain how that worked.
No.
It's just sort of like, okay, so who wins the lawsuit?
Well, it's just going to be thrown out. Everyone's just going to drop it.
But why?
So they can fight. I don't know. Don't ask me. I didn't.
That doesn't make any sense. What about all the terms?
Yeah. I guess the terms are just accepted, and now they're going to fight.
Okay, then they should be excited about a fight.
Perhaps they'll do a better explanation tomorrow. I actually don't believe that one bit.
I don't believe that either.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. So AJ was there with Daniel Bryan, and he was doing some calisthenics and such, and she came up and said, I still haven't gotten over you, and he said, I don't care, and she gave him a kiss. And off she went. So that's 2 kisses so far. We had Layla and Beth Phoenix for the Divas title, and crowd didn't care one bit. It was not a terrible match, but it really wasn't anything special. It went way too long, and Layla ended up winning with her neckbreaker.
It was just there. The crowd popped for the press slam spot, which was probably about the only real highlight. Yeah, it was just a match people didn't want to see, and they did a match.
We had AJ meeting with Kane, and she wished him luck and gave him the big kiss, and he suddenly, as she was leaving, grabbed her wrist and then pulled her in and made out with her. Left her covered in slobber, and she was distressed by this turn of events, and can't blame her. We had Unico and Sin Cara. We talked about this. Sin Cara with the La Mystica facebuster for the finish, and again, nobody cared. Which actually leads us to the 3-way.
Okay, but here's the thing. Sin Cara is another one. You remember, they had something with him, and now nobody cares. That's not a good sign. I mean, isn't the WWE the first time he showed up on TV, he was over? I mean, what does that tell you about a company when guys come in on day one are more over than after they've been on your TV for a long time?
Because the fans want new stars, and that's why they're over at the beginning, and then you teach the fans that these guys aren't going to be your new stars, and so they quit caring.
Yeah, pretty much.
The 3-way, the fans were waiting for Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. It was blatantly obvious after they beat Ziggler. They didn't care about anything till these guys came out. They loved Daniel Bryan, they loved CM Punk, and they appeared to tolerate Kane for the most part. And as far as a match, this actually was a hell of a lot better than I expected. It wasn't like a blow-away match or anything like that, but I thought Kane in the middle of this match was going to drag this match deep underground. And in fact, with Daniel Bryan and CM Punk in there, Kane did just fine. He had 2 great workers trying to carry this guy, and they worked great with each other. So in the end, ended up a perfectly acceptable 3-way match. And AJ actually, there was the argument that you build this whole thing around AJ and nobody's going to care about the match until AJ comes out. That was not the case at all. The fans cared a lot about this match, and she never came out until literally the last spot of the match.
I didn't think they wouldn't care, but I think that they would all know it wasn't the finish.
Yeah, but they were into a bunch of finishes and near fall attempts.
Yeah,
so
the people loved those 2 guys.
Oh yeah,
they were at this point in time. You got to remember, it was a very strong CM Punk crowd, and a lot of Daniel Bryan fans there. So that and they weren't into a lot of the stuff on the show, so they were ready. They were ready for a match. Plus, again, we're deep in a pay-per-view, and we haven't had one what I would call really good match. There were a couple of good ones, but nothing like really blow away. And the people I think they were really hungry for a good match, and as close as there could be to a really good match on this show, this was it.
So what happened at the end was Daniel Bryan got laid out. And I don't know what happened, but he was never seen again. He was out for I don't even know how long. But Punk and Kane are doing spots, and ends up with, I believe, Kane going for a tombstone, and Punk slipped behind and shoved him, and AJ had run at about 15,000 miles an hour down the ramp and jumped up on the apron. It was actually perfect timing. And Kane bonks into her, and she goes flying. And Kane is gravely concerned, which, of course, leads to Punk hitting a kick and a GTS and pinning Kane. So Punk retains the title, and Kane goes outside afterwards, and there's AJ on the ground, dead. And he lovingly picks her up in his arms, and he starts to carry her to the back. And they get the shot from behind of Kane walking up the ramp. And what do you see but AJ looking over Kane's shoulder and smiling at CM Punk in the ring? And this storyline apparently must continue. They're playing it up like she, I guess, oversold a bump by Kane in order to let CM Punk win.
No, it was all her plan, and she was there to make sure Kane that Punk won.
What great timing for this plan.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll get the follow-up on Raw, but right now we've got CM Punk and Sheamus as champions of the world, both currently scheduled as SmackDown brand touring wrestlers, which means...
You know what, though? I mean, these titles mean absolutely nothing, though.
Well, yeah, but we could get... I suppose we could get a title change on Raw, or they could move somebody onto a different tour.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Ryback faced two men, Rob Grimes and Dan Delaney, and of course he killed them. And the only thing of note here is that if you paid to see a Ryback pay-per-view squash match, you're at least the first person to know that he now wants 3 or possibly 4 men at a time.
Yeah, great.
I'm not sure about this idea of him trying to lift 4 men onto his shoulders for his finish.
Don't know about that one.
There better be some grizzly redwood-sized jobbers out there for him to get his hands on.
There are.
Trouble. That is true. There are.
There are.
There are. And then finally, we had John Cena Big Show in a cage match. Everybody knows stipulations. If John Cena lost, he would be fired. And if Big Show lost, Big Johnny fired. And, of course, Vince McMahon came out and sat at ringside and bore witness to the slowest main event in some time. These guys just lumbered around inside this cage, and Big Show beat him up for a long time. And they did this spot near the end where Laurinaitis was going to, I guess, hold the door open for Show so he could escape. And Vince ran up and prevented it. And there ended up being a schmoz where Laurinaitis took a bump, Vince took a bump, the referee took a bump, Big Show and John Cena are both down in the cage, and suddenly geeks come out. First we get Brodus Clay with a chair, who is daring Big Show to step out of the cage so he could waffle him with the chair. So, of course, Big Show won't go out. So Show decides he's going to try and climb over. So they start sending out what are described as victims of the Big Show. And we've got Santino, who tries to climb the cage and gets punched like a geek. Alex Riley, who tries to climb the cage and gets punched like a geek. Zack Ryder, who tries to climb a cage and gets punched like a geek. So Big Show is single...
We should mention that there was... What match was it where they were chanting for Zack Ryder?
It was the...
It was one of the matches they didn't care about. Might have been the Sin Cara match.
I think it was a match where there was supposed to be like a mystery opponent or something like that, and they all wanted Ryder. I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, the point was he came out and got treated like a total dork, so he gets beat up. And finally, out comes Kofi, and he kicks Big Show off the top of the cage. He's the only babyface that actually does something of any value here and doesn't look like a fool. So Cena ended up giving him the attitude adjustment. Now, keep in mind, unless I missed something, which is always possible, the ref was still unconscious here. And they both go to climb over the cage, and they do the photo finish of Big Show going out the door and John Cena hitting the ground. I didn't see a conscious referee, but as soon as John Cena hit the ground, they played his music anyway. So I guess the music guy is the referee when a situation like this happens in a cage match. But Vince, as I will say this, for those of you that paid money for the pay-per-view, at least you got to hear Vince McMahon fire John Cena on the pay-per-view, and you
John
didn't have
Laurinaitis.
to wait. That's right. You didn't have to wait for Raw. So Laurinaitis is fired. John Cena gave him the FU through the table, and presumably he'll... I bet that Laurinaitis misses one television show before he returns.
Maybe. Maybe he'll be back at the end of the show.
I would bet he's not on Raw tomorrow.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
Because he'll be back the week after.
He's gonna be back anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, they could always do. They could keep him up.
They could always change their mind. I mean, it's not.
They could do Cena against Big Show and Otunga for a while. Maybe that's why they didn't want to beat Otunga tonight.
Okay, that actually makes sense.
And then they'll actually keep Laurinaitis off TV for like a month to pay off one stipulation for a short period of time.
Okay.
Tomorrow is Raw. It's only 2 hours. Enjoy it while you can, everybody. We've got 4 weeks left, I think, and then it's 3 hours permanently. And
5. Let's see.
5 weeks.
Let's see. It's the 18th, 25, and then July 1, 8, and 15, or is it 2, 9, and 16? So it's 5.
5 weeks. So five weeks left before Doom. I'm trying to see if we've got anything else.
I'll tell you what, Doom, man. Doom is this coming Friday. That's Doom.
Don't remind me. Yeah, we got the world famous 2 days in a row UFC coming up. And actually, speaking of UFC, we got a lot of UFC news we should get into very quickly here. We've got injuries, drug test failures, and mystery promotion, I guess, for Silva and Sonnen. What's going on here?
Okay, so Silva and Sonnen are going to have the countdown show is going to be on Fuel, so that's like non-existent. However, they will have 1 30-minute prime time. It's not going to air on FX. It's going to air on Fox. I don't know when. So that's the one that Anderson didn't want to do, but they just told him, like, don't.
So wait a second. Anderson was willing to do the Fuel stuff, but not the stuff on Fox.
He didn't want to do any of it.
I see. Well, at least he's consistent.
Yeah, he didn't want to do it. He just wanted to be left. He just wanted to be left alone. He didn't want his training in Brazil to be filmed, and he didn't want to come to the United States and train either. And he just didn't want to cooperate. And I think they just forced him into it, basically. But
so is he coming to America, or are they going to Brazil?
I don't know. I don't know what happened on that. I just know that they've got a show, and he did it. And there's incredible frustration with not just him, but with a bunch of people who do not seem to get the idea that they're not happy with their pay, but their pay is tied in with how many buys there are, but they don't want to promote it because they don't want to break concentration.
I see, yeah.
So it's really a very frustrating thing. And then you've got the ones who don't have a cut, and their pay isn't really involved in it too much, although, like, your bonuses and things like that, it's still kind of like, I mean, like, if a show does better, you're probably still going to make more money as far as, like, bonuses if you're a top guy. Not if you're a bottom guy, but if you're a top guy. But there's no correlation, and they don't, it's like they don't understand that, so they don't want to cooperate there. So it's basically, we've got a lot of fighters that are really bad at marketing. And
it's time to have another fighter summit and have somebody come in to discuss this marketing concept to them.
They need that at the thing. I mean, instead of talking about, Twitter bonuses, they need to talk about pay-per-view bonuses and explain that your pay-per-view bonuses come from how many people buy the pay-per-view. And this is what gets people to buy pay-per-views. Saying bad things about your opponent, talking, all that stuff that nobody wants to do because it's considered, poor sportsmanship and all that. And it's like, look, I don't know. It's just people don't get it.
Fei Zhao failed a drug test, and at this point, I presume, do we know what it is, or do we have to wait till tomorrow?
We'll know tomorrow, hopefully, but we don't know. But I'll tell you this much. I mean, I saw Fei Zhao because this was the San Jose fight, so I was around him, and he was bigger and more muscular than usual, to the point where I was very concerned about that. So, I mean, like, you always see guys like that, but I was pretty concerned. So his failing didn't surprise me at all.
And now we've lost yet another fighter. Nogueira down.
Yeah. So that's out of the Calgary show, which is just completely cursed. It's like every single fight on that card is done. The only thing they got left is like Nick Ring.
That's so the replacement for that fight.
Sean Jordan against Sean Jordan against Czech Congo.
Chick Congo and Sean Jordan, everybody.
It's a fight.
It is, in fact, two guys fighting.
It's a
I
fight.
can say that.
It's what it is. And Sean Jordan, I'll say this, Sean Jordan's fights are usually pretty good. I mean,
nobody knows that, Dave. Nobody knows that.
Nobody knows anything. It's just a body. But, I mean, the fight, who knows? I mean, Congo's fight always seems to disappoint. But Sean Jordan's fights are usually pretty exciting.
Matt Morgan at the TNA show this weekend, house show. Apparently he's on his way out, and he made that very well known. I was mostly baffled that he beat Crimson.
More than that. I mean, here's the thing, okay? He may very well be done, but do you know that he's got a promotional tour for TNA to go to Australia, like, in the next week or two? So that, you know, it's like, wow, why would you do that? The other thing is that why would he leave right now? Because where's he going to go?
Well, maybe he's presuming that he will be able to go to WWE very soon, and that this freezing...
This lawsuit's not ending anytime soon. And Jerry McDivitt just told the court that they have no interest in any TNA stars. So if he were to go, they are not going to lose this lawsuit over signing Matt Morgan. He's not that big of a deal. And, you know, they do that, and I mean, it's like, you know, I'm not saying that they're going to lose the lawsuit, but if I'm the judge, I feel like I've been slapped in the face, and if I'm, you know, if I'm WWE, I wouldn't want that judge feeling like we slapped him in the face and we lied to him, because judges can be very, it's very bad legal stuff to do that. Plus, here's the other one. They're suing over tampering. Okay, Matt Morgan has already done public interviews saying that he has been contacted by WWE while he was under a TNA contract. So if he goes to WWE, I mean, you know, then they're gonna, you know, then TNA all of a sudden has a case. WWE handed them the case, and they're not WWE going to hand them that case. So
it's all true, but it also depends on. I didn't hear the Matt Morgan interviews. I don't know exactly how he phrased it. He may have just said, "I've heard there's interest in me," and you know, I maybe he was a complete fool and just said we've talked and that sort of thing. But the other thing to me is I don't know, but it just seems like the idea of a hiring freeze on all TNA talent, like for the foreseeable future, it just seems like that. I don't know. Yeah, I understand the case and everything like that, but I mean, how?
Well, I mean, Jerry
how long is
McDivitt.
it fair to not allow WWE to go after TNA talent?
It's not a matter of fair. Jerry McDivitt said they weren't going to do it, and if Jerry McDivitt lied, then their case.
Said we don't
then all of a sudden, their case doesn't look very good.
But what was his exact wording? He could have said that we don't. Currently
We have no interest in anyone in. We have no interest in anyone in TNA. We will not be hiring anyone from TNA.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, it wasn't ambiguous.
Well, he should have probably been a little more ambiguous.
Well, then they'd have the restraining order that they'd have to fight where the judge would have said you can't do it anyway. So then they wouldn't have gotten the restraining order overturned. They didn't want that restraining order out there on them either.
So the restraining order has been lifted, and now it's just a matter of they need to hold their word in order to not have this case turn out poorly for them.
Yep.
So why did they have the restraining order lifted then if they weren't going to hire anybody? Why did they care?
Because it's not good to have a restraining order on you.
Well, it's true, but if you have no interest, then who cares if you have this restraining order on you?
Because you don't want a restraining order on you. That's all. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
To who?
To anyone looking, because then all of a sudden it looks like, wow, you've been doing illegal things.
Well,
because you got a restraining order out against you.
I don't know.
I mean, okay, here's the thing. Okay, let's just say that. Let's just say that just because I'm not going to, let's just say me and my wife get in a big fight. I'm not going to use you and your wife, okay? We get in a big fight, okay? Now, I'm not going to go stalk my wife, and I'm not going to do anything like that. I'm not going to do that, okay? But if she gets a restraint, I still don't want her to get a restraining order on me. I can go like she can go get this restraining order, and I'll go, you know what? I don't care, because I wasn't gonna attack her anyway, and I wasn't gonna get within 50 feet of her. So, good, whatever. But you still don't want the restraining order out against you.
I understand as an individual, because maybe you'll want to get, I don't know, maybe you'll want to get a job as a PE teacher, and they go, my God, this guy's got a restraining order out against him. But we're just talking about WWE as a corporation.
Maybe you want to do sponsors or something, and the sponsors can go, you're a dirty company. They got a freaking restraining order out against you for, illegal practices. You don't really want that.
Well, no, but you could explain we're in the midst of a lawsuit that we're determined to win because we're right.
Yeah, they're going to go, but you got a restraining order out against you and you couldn't even get it dropped.
We'll see what happens in this court case, everyone.
What?
We'll just see what happens in the court case. This whole thing is
the court case is going to take 2 years.
Oh, my God. So a 2-year hiring, I don't know. They can't hire anybody for 2 years?
Matt Morgan probably ought to stay.
So I don't want to harp on this forever, but so you're telling me that, WWE, in order to not screw up this case, they're not going to hire anybody from TNA for 2 full years?
Not directly from TNA. Like, if a guy goes to TNA, like if Matt Morgan sits out a year and then they take him, I don't think there'd be any big deal.
But if
then.
Matt Morgan signs a deal
but
with,
but as far as someone who is directly in TNA going straight to WWE, that wouldn't look good right now.
All right, so maybe Matt Morgan is going to do one tour of New Japan and then get signed.
I think if it's 2 months, that wouldn't look good. I think if it's 8 or 9 months, it might be okay. He's going to sit out at the age of 36 for 9 months.
Well, he has been doing that for a while in TNA, really. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's true, too. It's not like they're doing anything with him. So why did he Crimson today, or last night?
That was my number one question.
Well, I did ask because I thought it was absolutely insane. Plus, Bruce Pritchard was at the show. It's in Houston, Texas. That's where Bruce lives. So you got the head of creative there. And I will say this about Bruce Pritchard. Bruce Pritchard has been around this business since he's 10 years old. He was a gopher for Paul Bosch and stuff. But he's worked in this business. He worked for Bill Watts, okay? So, and I mean, he worked for Vince McMahon and all these guys who were always vindictive on guys on the way out and everything. So it's not like he never learned this, that you don't whatever. So I didn't get it. And when I asked, it was well, Matt Morgan may not be leaving. It's but he may be leaving. Well, you know what? Then if he may be leaving, Crimson still should win. Besides, all of a sudden this guy has a 16-month or whatever it is unbeaten streak. Now he's losing 3 times in a week. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it kind of does kill the special.
But I mean, I get him losing to James Storm. James Storm is going to be, the next world champion. He's going to main event Bound for Glory. But Matt Morgan?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's do some of the questions here. This person says, did you know beforehand that Foley was going to be thrown off the cell by The Undertaker at King of the Ring in 1998? And what was your reaction seeing that as it happened?
I did not know, and my reaction was...
the same as Jim Ross's, essentially.
It's oh, my God, now he's gone way too far this time. I mean, when he took the first bump, it was just well, that's it. When he got up and took the second one, it was just this guy is so...
Well, the second one wasn't supposed to be like the second one was.
I know, but still. But it was.
But, I mean, at the moment, it was why did you do 2 of these, you idiot? Why did you do 1? But...
no, that first one, when he took the first one, it was just, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah. This person says, what was the deal with Hulk Hogan winning the IWGP title tournament in '83? I was reading an old Observer yearbook, and Dave alludes to shenanigans, but doesn't go into detail, probably because he covered it in depth when it happened.
Okay, here's the situation. What happened was supposed to happen, but New Japan or Inoki played it off like it was real. And not that the result was real, but that Inoki was hurt really bad. Swallowed his tongue, wind convulsions, or whatever the deal was. And it actually turned out to be something that hurt New Japan down the line because Inoki was a huge celebrity and every newspaper covered it, that Inoki was injured and all this. And later when it came out that it was a wrestling angle, a lot of the newspapers were really mad about that, and actually wouldn't, they cut back on a lot of them wouldn't cover New Japan for a while, whether just any kind of coverage, because they just felt taken in. New Japan still did well for a while there, but because that was 83. Actually, New Japan that was June of 83, and by August of 83 was when New Japan kind of started falling apart. So they probably would have needed, that probably didn't help them any, and a lot of the newspaper stories about them falling apart, but no, it was the planned finish. Hogan was supposed to go over on a knockout, and it was the finish the next year when Inoki won. That was the finish that was a disaster, because Hogan by that point, because in 83 Hogan was still with Vern. So in 84 Hogan's with Vince, and he's IWGP champion. He's supposed to lose to Inoki, and you got Vince involved and Hogan involved, and they're not doing a job to save their life. It ain't going to happen. So the best they could do was a count out, and Hogan would not do, and this could have been Vince as much as Hogan. I don't know who to blame. It's probably a little bit of both. But the thing is that it wasn't one of those things where Antonio Inoki and Hogan could fight outside the ring, and Inoki beats the 20 count, and he wins the championship that way, because title can change on a count out in Japan. No, it had to be that it had to be outside interference. And then you had Inoki's ego. Okay, so the deal was it had to be an outside. The only way Hogan would lose was outside interference. So they go, okay, well, Ricky Choshu, who was like the next guy down on the list. The biggest, Inoki and Hogan were the two big stars, and Ricky Choshu was probably the number, and Fujinami were like 3 and 4, but Choshu was probably a little more over than Fujinami at that point. So Ricky Choshu will lariat Hogan, still won't do the job but he'll do the count out. However, now you got Inoki's ego going I don't want to win the championship that way. So what he did was he had Ricky Choshu lariat him and lariat Hogan, and then Inoki got in so he could say, well, I took the same move Hogan did, but I beat the 20 count and he didn't, so therefore I deservedly won the championship. And anyway, that resulted in a riot, and that wasn't good. It was a bad riot.
All right, one more here. This person says, over the last 25, 30 years, Vince McMahon has one way or another put the territories out of business, bought the stars of the AWA, used them in that area until he went out of business, bought WCW, tried to recreate ECW in his vision, each time trying to capture the market from these companies, but losing fans in the process. My question is, for all the talk about McMahon's growth, has any promoter actually lost more fans than Vince McMahon?
You know what you just said is exactly the same thing that you could say about UFC. I mean, they bought Pride, they brought Strikeforce, and they didn't do anything with them either. Even though Strikeforce still exists, it's not nearly as popular as it was. But has any promoter ever lost more fans than Vince McMahon? I think that's a hard question, because there's people who've gone out of business. Crockett. I mean, because of the national basis, maybe no, but Crockett lost a lot. I mean, WCW lost a lot of fans. I mean, Vince was not the worst promoter there's ever been. He's closer to the best. I would even say he was the best, even though, there's that argument that if he was the best promoter there ever was, he should have made wrestling more popular than it ever was, and he actually made it less popular, so how could he be the best? But I still think he was probably the best. It's just, the reality is that, yeah, wrestling's a lot less popular than when he, 1982 to now, wrestling's lost a lot of popularity. But I do think that, you could say that wrestling was very popular in 84 to 87, and it was really popular again in probably 98 to 2001, above what it was in 1982. So it's like he did have these two pockets where he made it more popular. But now, yeah, it's a lot less popular.
All right, everybody, we're going to wrap it up for today, but we're going to be back tomorrow with a brand new show after Raw. We'll talk all of the matches on the show, all of the news from Monday, probably going to be a lot of it, and preview the rest of the week as well. We've got shows, I think every single day till what, the 20, what day did you say? For about
25th?
the next week, 25th or something like that. We got shows every single solitary day in addition to the ones I already do. So get ready for audio, everybody. There's going to be a lot of it. So that's it from here. We'll talk to you again tomorrow night.